Was this cup here all the time? My favorite phrase, كل سنة وانت طيب انت عايز فلوس؟ صباح العسل على العينك. Hello. I'm very well. Well, for personally, yes, because I love film. I think film is fantastic, and I've learned so much about life and acting through film. But for me, I haven't yet had an experience that makes me think, oh yeah, I love film. Because as an actor, in theatre, I get the chance to rehearse, to work on my role. I get the chance to develop it by playing it continuously night after night in front of a live audience, whether it's for 3 weeks or 3 months or 6 months, even 9 months I've played it for, So it's an entirely different kind of setup from film, which tends to be rather kind of spontaneous. Cut, that didn't work, do it again. Cut, that didn't work, do it again. Cut. It's all a bit sort of mechanistic somehow. And theatre for me is a living experience, which is very, very satisfying. And it's not over. I think there's a kind of curious idea here in Egypt that actors who work in theatre are somehow over. And I think that comes from the idea that a lot of theatre is kind of comedy farce. So people are being very exaggerated, like I guess like Adel Imam, in these stage comedies. That's not really what drama's about. It's about something else. It's about stuff by Jean-Paul Sartre or Schiller or Bertolt Brecht, and all these great playwrights are really what I grew up with. As an acting coach, I've worked for 20 years here in Egypt. But actually, as an acting coach of myself, I worked all my life because I taught myself to act. I didn't adopt any method or a technique or idea, and I rejected the conventional idea of acting in the UK and taught myself. And that took me another 30 years. So in all 50 years. Why did I choose Egypt? Because I was fascinated by the idea of storytelling originating here from a long time ago. Basic things like Alf Layla wa Layla, 1001 Nights and stuff like that. And I wanted to meet those storytellers in the flesh from Upper Egypt. While I was doing that, someone said, would you like to start running a workshop? And I thought, well, how on earth do I turn my own process as an actor into workshop material? And that's the beginning of it. And it's still going 20 years later. And it's an ongoing process. It's always changing, it's always developing, it's always new. And it changes because all the participants are changing. They're all unique as far as I'm concerned, because I'm working with the living self. I'm not working with a narrow idea of acting. I'm working with the whole person. The concept is to know yourself, basically, to know yourself on the inside, what it means to be human. Because I feel very strongly that if you want to be an actor, you have to know something about your human condition. And if all you know is what you think you know in your head, conceptual thinking, including your past life, your memories, where you were brought up, your culture, and so on, that's not enough. You have to know how the human being as a whole works. So in my workshop, I teach about the body, and I teach about the body from the inside, because body is something that most people have mostly forgotten. They start off by being these extraordinary bodies when they're children, and they're continually in movement and exploring and finding out about life. And then when they go to school, they're made to sit still. They're not allowed to move, they're not allowed to exercise, they're not allowed to have emotions, basically. And they have to learn this kind of rational, conceptual kind of thinking. And so they lose it all. And so when I'm working in a workshop, I have to get that back from people. People have forgotten that, and I have to get them back. So it's like I'm introducing themselves to themselves again, through the body and through their emotions and through their senses and through their feelings and through movement. And that for me is the real actor, is something that's alive and present here and now. Yeah, I mean, I would say that I expect people to be very curious about themselves. I want that, and to be very adventurous, who are willing to take risks and go into places that are very often quite dark in terms of their own experience of themselves. Dark, emotional places, shadow places where they feel guilty and ashamed, or they have some kind of anger or whatever. So in a way, a lot of this early work is a kind of therapy, as it was for me as a young actor. Doing all the roles that I played, each role was a kind of therapy to get through some kind of emotional block that I had. The purpose of my workshops, certainly the beginner's workshop, is about that. Well, improvisation is something we're improvising now. As we're talking now, we're improvising. We don't know what's going on here at all. And the actor who works with text tends to think that the text becomes fixed. So there's no improvisation. It's kind of like an idea of acting as something that's dead, or performed acting. So they're not giving what happens between the lines and beneath the lines any space, any life. So improvisation is actually about working with text. So when you work with text with me, you learn to improvise as well, because it's all about what's happening between people in a non-verbal sense, not just about words. Well, I think in terms of art, we can't really talk about universities because I'm an artist basically. But yeah, I mean, I left school at 15. I absolutely loathed school. I hated it so much. And all I wanted to do was act. And I'd been acting since I was 9. And from there, I went on to be the lead role in a film for the BBC. And then I went to acting school at the age of 17. I was the youngest student they'd ever had. But they presented me with stuff that I just didn't believe in, I didn't accept. I changed my whole approach to acting. And so my school was really, if you want to know my basic school, yeah, it was working in a film, playing the lead role in a film, it was working on stage, but it was also 3 years diploma course, an academy in Scotland, So but the real school is happening when you're doing it. It's happening in the professional world. And that I was doing continuously for 30 years. That's the school. It's not about, where you went to school, really. It's not that. I think the presence is extremely important. It's what attracts us towards someone. When someone has presence, we know it. But that person who has presence one day might not have it the next. So the actor needs to learn how he or she generates presence inside where it actually comes from, because it's easily lost. And so we can call it charisma as well, really. It's just that something that makes you want to look at that person, to be drawn to them, and that's, when you're on stage, you have to learn also not to have presence. You have to learn to dim yourself so that someone else can take over. But in my case, that was difficult. I always had to have presence. I always had to shine. Well, of course, I think Mahmoud Hamid is a good actor. He's a mature actor. Kathakali.